Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Dragon Prince Yuan Season 3 episode number 5 based on novel. So let's start. What's going on? Numerous gazes flickered in confusion. His Genesis Chi is growing. Cried out someone. They had sensed the Genesis Chi inside Ju Yuan's body gradually begin to strengthen at this moment. Is he also using a secret art? It's different. His Genesis Chi growth is extremely stable and natural, unlike how Lu Feng had forcibly raised his earlier. While numerous whispers spread, Ju Yuan's clothes flapped as the Genesis Chi undulations grew stronger and stronger. In the end, it suddenly rumbled with a violent shake. Golden Genesis Chi exploded from Ju Yuan's body, dashing straight into the sky. The silhouette of a giant python formed within the golden light and hissed at the heavens. A hiss like thunder while also bearing resemblance to a dragon's roar. His Genesis Chi undulations forcibly broke into the second layer Alpha Origin stage at this moment. Countless cries of alarm and surprise rang across the area. Face after face was filled with shock and astonishment. No one had expected Ju Yuan to have a breakthrough at this moment, stepping from the first layer Alpha Origin stage into the second layer. Ju Yuan's lightly shut eyes slowly opened, golden light swimming within them. He could feel the drastic increase of Genesis Chi in his Chi dwelling, causing him to laugh softly. The truth was that after 3 months of tough training in the outer mountains, he should have long stepped into the second layer Alpha Origin. However, he had repeatedly suppressed it in order to better stabilize his foundations. His original plan was to ascend after entering the inner mountains, but it seemed that now was also an appropriate time. As Golden Genesis Chi surged, the pressure from Lu Feng's body unknowingly weakened substantially. Ju Yuan's Genesis Chi cultivation had clearly soared after stepping into the second layer Alpha Origin stage. In the air, Lu Feng had naturally also sensed the changes in the Genesis Chi around Ju Yuan's body, causing the former's face to distort. He never imagined that this peasant would surpass his expectations time and time again. Intense envy and anger bubbled out in his heart. God damn it! I am a genius of the Lu clan. How can a peasant like you possibly compare? Won't you obediently let me crush you under my feet, and become my stepping stone? Why are so intent on death? Since that is so, die! Howled Lu Feng in his heart with scarlet red eyes. With a shriek, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood which landed on the titanic green comet, immediately causing the Genesis Chi on it to grow exceedingly berserk. Rumble. The gigantic green comet plummeted towards Ju Yuan, bringing with it an impossible large shadow and destruction. A dreadful pressure descended from the sky. Ju Yuan raised his head, revealing the indifference on his face as he suddenly sucked in a deep breath. His hands came together as his body trembled faintly. Several breaths later, everyone saw a pillar of Genesis Chi light abruptly fly into the sky. Roar! A deafening roar thundered from within the Genesis Chi. Countless gazes shot over. Everyone watched as an enormous beast swiftly began to form inside the Genesis Chi, while a dreadful aura of ferocity unfurled across the land. This beast surpassed the 3 from before, reaching over 600 feet in height. Jiyu Hongi gasped as she gazed upon the Genesis Chi beast, evidently having recognized it. It was the Grade 5 Genesis Beast Essence Blood she had given Ju Yuan previously. However, for some unknown reason, the savage aura from this beast was extraordinarily powerful. 9 Dragons Cannon, 4th Dragon. Countless shocked gazes watched as Ju Yuan suddenly stomped the ground, while a deep voice emerged from his mouth. The over 600 feet tall Genesis Qi beast roared like a dragon as it charged forward. In the end, it slammed into the giant green comet that was falling from the sky. Everyone was glued to this scene. They knew that this was the deciding moment. An earth-shaking explosion unfurled high up in the sky, the berserk shockwaves that swept outwards causing the sky to slightly distort. Even the air in the vicinity was unable to bear the force, multiple explosions booming one after another. Every gaze was tightly glued to the sky, not daring to even blink once. They knew that it was finally time to decide the winner. Everyone wondered who would be the one to remain standing till the end. Under the attention of countless gazes, the destructive energies in the sky gradually began to dissipate after some time. The golden platform was finally revealed, now full of holes and cracks, as if it had undergone a terrifying impact. However, no one paid any attention to the damage. Every gaze cast towards the 2 figures atop it instead. 2 figures that were currently frighteningly still. A breeze blew past, rolling up the dust. Lu Feng's eyes were red as he stared at Zhu Yuan and said in a hoarse voice, How can your 9 dragons cannon be so powerful? He had undoubtedly bought up all of the Grade 5 Genesis Beast Essence blood in the Glittering Jewels Pavilion. Zhu Yuan's 9 dragons cannon had surely been limited, but the earlier move had shaken even Lu Feng's heart. Zhu Yuan's expression was calm as he let loose a long, drawn-out breath. The golden light in his eyes gradually receded as the Genesis chi around him shrank back into his body. He slowly said, "It seems that you can't take first place in the peak selection ceremony." He had no choice but to admit that Lu Feng was indeed very powerful, and the battle could be considered a bitter struggle for Zhu Yuan. Unfortunately for Lu Feng, Zhu Yuan's preparations had been more thorough this time. Lu Feng's eyes were dyed red, unable to accept this outcome. A mouthful of fresh blood was abruptly vomited from his mouth as his body slowly fell face flat towards the ground, causing him to fall unconscious due to his heavy injuries. The moment Lu Feng touched the ground, the entire world around them seemed to fall silent. The mouths of countless disciples slowly fell open as shock and amazement gathered in their eyes. In the next moment, a torrential wave of noise that filled the sky exploded, so deafening that it could probably turn over a mountain. No one had imagined that Lu Feng would lose the contest. Little Yuan bro is too damn amazing. Shen Wanjin and the rest were dumbstruck as they gazed upon the only standing figure on the golden stone platform. Although they had hoped all along that Zhu Yuan would win, they did not truly understand his abilities, making them feel rather awkward and uncertain even when supporting him. After all, Lu Feng's reputation was just far too overwhelming. Hence, when Lu Feng finally fell, it had been a pretty huge blow to them. Xiao Qianxian had a complicated look on his face, fear in his gaze as he looked towards Zhu Yuan. At this very moment, all he felt was admiration for his father's judgment. Given the talent Zhu Yuan had displayed, there was no doubt that he would become a core member of the Zhangshuan sect, and have an extremely bright future. When that time came, his name would likely be known even in the entire Zhangshuan heaven. Such a person was someone you would absolutely not want to hold a grudge with. Ji Yuhongyi raised her clean, bright and pretty face, an exceptional splendor in her eyes, as she gazed at Zhu Yuan's figure. This result had likewise also shaken her. Although she was not fond of Lu Feng, she had no choice but to admit that he was indeed a capable individual. At the very least, the current her would not be able to take the upper hand against him. However, Zhu Yuan had defeated him. She clearly understood that Zhu Yuan was from some remote continent, and naturally could not match the cultivation resources of people like them from the prestigious clans of the Xingzhou continent. And yet, the latter had still managed to grasp victory in the end. Just how amazing was he? Ji Yuhongyi pursed her red lips, recalling the first time she saw him. Back then, he had been mocked by many because he had used the back door to become a first-class disciple. Everyone had thought only disdain for him then. However, who could have foreseen that the one they looked down on would stand at the pinnacle of the peak selection ceremony 3 months later, becoming an existence they now had to raise their heads to look at. "Looks like you saved me." Yang Xiao suddenly let out a bitter chuckle. There was wariness in his eyes as he gazed at Zhu Yuan's figure and sighed. He knew that if he was the one fighting the latter, his defeat would have been even swifter and more miserable. As such, Ji Yuhongyi's obstruction had ended up saving his face. While the numerous disciples were practically in frenzy, there was also a little disturbance in the Genesis chi clouds above. Sect Master Qingyang looked at the youthful figure and nodded his head with a smile. Not bad. As expected of the one who obtained Teacher's Saint Blood baptism. A soul-stirring smile appeared on Peak Master Liu Lianyi's gorgeous face. Her eyes turned as she looked towards Ling Jun and grinned. "It seems that your sword cometh peak miscalculated." The smile on Ling Jun's fair as jade face receded slightly. One could tell that this outcome had exceeded his expectations. However, he was after all a hegemon and someone whose thoughts were pretty much impossible to read. Therefore, he responded in a nonchalant voice, "This young one is extraordinary. Lu Feng's loss is not without reason." He deeply looked at Zhu Yuan, before turning to the rubble where Lu Feng had collapsed, taking a mere glance before withdrawing his gaze, evidently extremely disappointed in the latter. Beside him, Lu Xuanin's pretty face was deathly pale. She gazed at the golden stone platform in a daze, before suddenly feeling a wave of humiliation drown her as she lost control of herself and said, "How can Lu Feng have lost to him? Zhu Yuan must have cheated." The moment these words left her mouth, she sensed Ling Jun's stern and powerful gaze sweep towards her, causing her to instantly clamp her mouth in fear. This is no place for you to speak. You will seek punishment after returning to the Swarth Cometh Peak. Ling Jun's tone was one of indifference. Lu Xianyan trembled, not faring to object, as she hurriedly lowered her head and acknowledged. Sectmaster Qing Ying's deep as the night gaze looked downwards. All of the 9,999 placings had already been decided, the peak selection ceremony clearly already near its end. However, he was a little surprised that 6 of the top 10 spots came from non-Xingju continents, an event that rarely occurred. After all, the disciples from the Xingju continent had many advantages over those from other continents. As for first place, it would go to a Xingju disciple 8 out of 10 times. Zhu Yuan's strong showing this time was truly akin to a stunning dark horse. Sectmaster Qing Yang waved his sleeve, causing specks of light to fall from the sky, like dew as it landed on everyone on the stone platforms. The specks of light submerged into the many disciples' bodies, and they were pleasantly surprised to discover their Genesis Qi instantly recover. In addition, their numerous injuries were now fully healed. We thank Sectmaster. The numerous disciples cupped their fists together. Sectmaster Qing Yang chuckled softly, before his grand voice rang out, starting today, all of you will be part of the inner mountains. Joy was revealed on the faces of the disciples on the 9,999 stone platforms upon hearing this, as if a burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Sectmaster Qing Yang's gaze turned towards the top 10 figures as he continued, the top 10 may choose their peaks, and will also be bestowed the status of a gold sash disciple, allowing them to enjoy the cultivation resources of a gold sash disciple. Before the many disciples' gazes could shoot over, his gaze had already paused on Zhu Yuan's body as a smile emerged on his face, his voice also growing much warmer and kinder. Zhu Yuan, as the champion of the ceremony, you may also select your peak. I'll ask you now, which of Zhongshuan's 7 peaks do you wish to join? By the time Sectmaster Qing Yang's words faded, every gaze in the area had undoubtedly converged on Zhu Yuan's body once again. As the champion of the ceremony, Zhu Yuan would receive special treatment no matter which peak he chose. Sectmaster Qing Yang gazed at Zhu Yuan, those deep as the night eyes seemingly smiling as he said, my Zhongshuan peak is the number 1 peak in that Zhongshuan sect. If you are willing, you may join. Senior brother Sectmaster, that's too much. Peak Master Liu Lianyan immediately rolled her eyes at Sectmaster Qing Yang. That Zhongshuan peak is already the number 1 peak, why compete with the rest of us? She was clearly very satisfied with Zhu Yuan. He had a scholarly look, and was more importantly quite the handsome young man. In addition, his talent was pretty astonishing. If he could be recruited into the Snow Lotus Peak, there would surely be another outstanding disciple of the Snow Lotus Peak in the future. When that happened, the Snow Lotus Peak may even get another person on the Zhongshuan sect's 10 great chosens. That last Li Qingchan would also no longer need to represent the Snow Lotus Peak alone. However, Peak Master Liu Lianyi had barely finished when the Hongya Peak Master Jiyu Qianhong shook his head and said in a voice akin to thunder, this kid is suited to external tempering. He should enter my Hongya Peak. He looked towards Zhu Yuan as he continued, young one, if you enter my Hongya Peak, I promise to promote you to a purple sash disciples in 3 years. His words immediately drew countless envious gazes towards Zhu Yuan. Promotion to a purple sash disciple in 3 years. This was already rather quick. Zhu Yuan was somewhat dazed, clearly not expecting several hegemons to fight over him. These hegemons had been so mysterious and dignified earlier, why had they suddenly become akin to peddlers that were enthusiastically trying to sell their wares? Barbarian Jiyu. Berated Liu Lianin as her phoenix eyes glared at Jiyu Qianhong. The words had barely left her mouth when the white-brow elder from the Spirit Rune Peak stroked his hanging eyebrows and slowly said, I can see that your spirit is at a decent level. If you practice the art of Genesis runes, you will definitely achieve extraordinary things. It just so happens that my Spirit Rune Peak is number 1 in the area of Genesis runes in the Zhongshuan sect. Peak Master Lianyi laughed in anger. These bastards, she had clearly been the one most concerned about Zhu Yuan earlier, but now that he became champion, the rest came to snatch him away one after another. She cast her gaze at Zhu Yuan and said, Zhu Yuan, if you enter my Snow Lotus Peak, I will gift you a Genesis mountain. These words instantly caused the eyes of many disciples to turn crazed with desire. Even Zhu Yuan could not help but lick his lips. A Genesis mountain, one must know that there was only one in the whole of the outer mountains, which was used by several tens of thousands of disciples. Peak Master Liu Lianyi was actually going to bestow an entire Genesis mountain to a single person, him. Although it would most definitely not be as grand as the one in the outer mountains, the effectiveness of having it for one's sole usage would naturally be out of this world. It was said that even in the inner mountains, only the most outstanding disciples would get to enjoy such treatment. The fact that Zhu Yuan would be given such a reward when he entered the inner mountains just showed how high of an opinion Peak Master Liu Lianyi had of him. While the numerous disciples were practically drowning in envy, the sword cometh Peak Master Ling Jun chuckled softly, an unknown look in his eyes as he looked towards Zhu Yuan and said, Zhu Yuan, if you enter my sword cometh peak, you will receive the same treatment as the Snow Lotus Peak. Lu Xianyin could not help but tightly clench her jaw when she heard this, but did not dare to interject. The only thing she could do was send hateful and angry glared at Zhu Yuan. All of this should have originally belonged to Lu Feng. But now, it had been taken away by a filthy peasant. Zhu Yuan was slightly stunned as he glanced at Peak Master Ling Jun. He was naturally aware of Lu Feng's close ties to the Sword Cometh Peak, and his defeat of the latter to obtain first place could from a certain point of view be akin to humiliating Peak Master Ling Jun. Hence why he was quite surprised by the former's words. However, the current situation had become quite a headache. At this moment, a cold and stern voice suddenly rang out, Sect Master and my fellow Peak Masters, though it is gratifying that all of you love talent, do not break the rules. The resources of the sect are to be exchanged via contribution. Carelessly gifting resources away is an infringement. His voice seemed to rumble like thunder as it boomed across the area. Zhu Yuan looked over. The one who had spoken was the one who had stayed silent since the beginning, Peak Master Lei Jun of the Thunder Prison Peak. This Peak Master was the most senior person in the Zhangshuan sect. Hence, even Sect Master Qingyang faintly nodded at his words and said, Peak Master Lei Jun is right. Everything shall be done in accordance to the rules. Peak Master Liu Lianyi and the rest said no more after hearing this. Sect Mater Qingyang looked towards Zhu Yuan and slowly said, Zhu Yuan, as the champion of the ceremony, you have the right to select your peak. Go ahead. Zhu Yuan's expression trembled slightly as he acknowledged, before falling silent for a moment. His gaze turned to a stone platform in the distance and met with Yaoiro's. Every gaze in the area was gathered on his body. Zhu Yuan took in a deep breath and looked towards Sect Master Qingyang and the rest as he said in a deep voice, this disciple wants to enter the Saint Genesis Peak. After all, he had been directed to the Zhangshuan sect by Patriarch Kang Xian to obtain the second Saint Rune hidden in the Saint Genesis Peak. Zhu Yuan's words immediately made everyone's eyes widen. Even Sect Master Qingyang, Peak Master Liu Lianyi and the rest were taken aback, shocked as they looked towards Zhu Yuan. This was evidently out of their expectations. Even the quiet Thunder Prison Peak Master Lei Jun raised his head and cast his cold and stern gaze over. Sect Master Qingyang was silent for a while, before he slowly said, Zhu Yuan, you should know that Saint Genesis Peak was where our teacher secluded himself. However, following teacher's death, most of the areas in Saint Genesis Peak were sealed. It currently has no peak master, and is managed by several elders. Over the years, very few disciples would choose Saint Genesis Peak. In fact, not a single one of our Zhangshuan sect's 10 great chosens comes from Saint Genesis Peak. So why do you wish to choose it? Under the gazes of the hegemons, Zhu Yuan cupped his fists together and answered, I was able to come to the Zhangshuan sect, because I obtained the Patriarch's Saint Blood baptism in the Saint Remains domain. I owe the Patriarch a debt of gratitude, and although I dare not say I will make it flourish, I hope to enter Saint Genesis Peak such that I may do my best to stop its decline. This is the only thing I can do to repay the Patriarch. His gaze was slightly lowered. The secret of the Saint Runes was related to the Zhangshuan Saint Stamp, a true god-tier artifact whose implications were far too great. Hence, Patriarch Kang Xian had repeatedly warned him that he could not reveal the secret. Therefore, Zhu Yuan was naturally not going to divulge the information that the second Saint Rune was hidden in the Saint Genesis Peak. Most importantly, Patriarch Kang Xian suspected that his death may be related to the inner department of the Zhangshuan sect. As such, it was even more crucial that Zhu Yuan did not reveal anything. If the Patriarch's suspicious turned out to be true, Zhu Yuan would not be able to ensure his safety. Thus, he needed an extremely good excuse to enter Saint Genesis Peak. Zhu Yuan's words immediately caused the gazes of Sect Master Qingyang, Peak Master Liu Lianyi, and the rest to ease slightly. Patriarch Kang Xian was their deeply respected teacher after all. Although they felt Zhu Yuan's words of repaying his debt of gratitude were rather immature, it's exactly why he still had the naive character of a youth. A regretful look appeared in Peak Master Liu Lianyi's eyes, her gaze turning even gentler as she looked towards Zhu Yuan and said, "Since you have this wish, go ahead, and do what your heart wants. If there is anything you do not understand in the future, you may seek instruction from my Snow Lotus Peak." Zhu Yuan hastily thanked her in a respectful manner. He could feel that Peak Master Lianyi was filled with kind intentions. Sect Master Qingyang also nodded. "Since that is your choice, I can only fulfill it. From now onwards, you will be part of Saint Genesis Peak." Zhu Yuan breathed a sigh of relief inside his heart, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He had finally succeeded. After he entered, he would find a chance to search for the second Saint Rune. Zhu Yuan's ultimate choice of the Saint Genesis Peak was an outcome that undoubtedly surpassed everyone's expectations. After all, although Saint Genesis Peak was of amazing origins, and was said to be the place where the founder secluded himself for cultivation, at the end of the day, Patriarch Kang Xian was already dead. The main peak of the Saint Remains Peak had been sealed when Patriarch Kang Xian died. As a result, no new peak master had been appointed till now, leaving only 3 elders to manage it. These along with various other reasons led to the decline of Saint Genesis Peak, causing less and less disciples to choose it. Currently, not a single one of the Tsangshuan sect's 10 great chosens were from Saint Genesis Peak. From this, one could see the pitiful state of Genesis Saint Peak. Under such circumstances, Zhu Yuan's choice clearly baffled many people. While confused, they were also secretly glad. Given the capabilities he had displayed, he would definitely begin to spread his wings and soar if he entered any of the other 6 peaks, and in several years very likely become known as the figurehead of this batch of disciples. Since Zhu Yuan had now given up on the 6 peaks and headed for the Saint Genesis Peak instead, it would undoubtedly delay his progress, giving other disciples the chance to catch up and even surpass him. Beside Peak Master Ling Jun, Lu Xianyin was also stunned by Zhu Yuan's choice. Soon after, wild joy flitted across her eyes. "Zhu Yuan, I never imagined that you would actually choose the Saint Genesis Peak. It seems that even the heavens do not favor you." Lu Xianyin tightly clenched her hands, joy nearly spilling from her eyes. There used to be a senior member of their Lu clan, who occupied one of an important elder position in the Sword Cometh Peak. Some time ago, this elder just so happened to be dispatched to the Saint Genesis Peak by Peak Master Ling Jun. Therefore, one of the 3 elders of the Saint Genesis Peak was that senior member of their Lu clan. Wasn't Zhu Yuan's selection of the Saint Genesis Peak akin to throwing himself into their nets? "Zhu Yuan, you snatched away Lu Feng's first place, a grudge that we will naturally properly settle in the future. So what if you're the champion of the ceremony, you will ultimately regret offending our Lu clan." Lu Xianyin icily chuckled inside, finally feeling as if all the pent-up frustration from earlier had been released. On the Genesis Cheek Lotus, Sect Master Qingyang looked towards Zhu Yuan again and said, "As the champion, you have other rewards." With a wave of his sleeve, a glowing bundle descended from the sky, transforming into an old-looking book. It was as if a sun was rising on the old book, giving off an extremely scorching aura that slightly distorted the surrounding space. This is known as the Heavenly Sun God Record, a low-grade Heaven Genesis technique. These words immediately drew countless gasps, envious gaze after gaze practically glowing as they gazed at the floating old book in front of Zhu Yuan. It was a real Heaven Genesis technique. One must know that even in the Xingju continent, a low-grade Heaven Genesis technique was an ultimate treasure to the many factions, and would oftentimes be the cause of countless bitter struggles. Zhu Yuan's mouth was also a little dry, his eyes unable to pull themselves away from the old book before him. This was a true blue Heaven Genesis technique. One must know that he had never caught a glimpse of such a technique even in the Saint Remains domain. Although he had learnt several little Heaven Genesis techniques, even the 9 Dragons canon was far from being able to match this Heavenly Sun God record. It was said that one could exchange Genesis Jade for a Heaven Genesis technique in the Inner Mountains Hidden Scriptures house. However, the amount needed was far too enormous, likely reaching the tens of thousands. It would take many disciples working hard for an extremely long time in order to earn enough for one. "Thank you, Sect Master." Zhu Yuan bowed, before very carefully receiving the old book, and keeping it into his universe bag with a gleeful look on his face. Sect Master Qingyang chuckled. There is still one more prize for this bat's champion, the Genesis Marrow Baptism. With regards to this matter, a slot will be bestowed to you after entering St. Genesis Mountain. Zhu Yuan nodded, part curiosity, part anticipation in his heart. It was said that only the Purple Sash disciples were able to enjoy the Genesis Marrow Baptism, which was extremely beneficial to one's cultivation. After settling things on Zhu Yuan's side, Sect Master Qingyang finally turned towards the other top 10 disciples and said, all of the other top 10 also have the right to choose their own peaks. It was exactly as Zhu Yuan had declared previously, including himself. 6 of the top 10 spots had been occupied by non-Xingju disciples. Song Wanqi, Zhao Kuan and Qiao Xiu had managed to defeat their opponents. All of the top 10 disciples were clearly already prepared to select their peaks, and swiftly vocalized their decisions one after another. Jiyu Hongyi chose the Tsangshuan Peak, Song Wanqi the Snow Lotus Peak, while Qiao Xiu and Zhao Kuan both picked the Hongya Peak. As for the rest, they were basically split such that each of the 6 peaks had at least one person joining. When it came to Yao Yao's turn, however, before she could speak, the White Brow Elder from the Spirit Rune Peak cut in, "Little girl, your Genesis Rune talent is the best amongst everyone I've seen over the years. If you join my Spirit Rune Peak in the future, I may perhaps pass down my position as Peak Master to you." His words not only stupefied every disciple, but even Sect Master Qingyang and the rest looked towards him in shock. The White Brow Elder ignored their gazes, his glowing eyes gazing at Yao Yao. The emotions currently present within them had not appeared even when he was facing Zhu Yuan earlier. The truth was that the White Brow Elder had been focusing on Yao Yao ever since she ascended a platform. He had already found out from Zhongming about her Genesis Rune talent, and had thus paid special attention to her in secret. He discovered the way she set up her Genesis runes had the makings of a Grandmaster, allowing him to understand how terrifyingly amazing her talent was. For someone like Yao Yao, once her spirit cultivation caught up in the future, she would have unlimited prospects in the path of Genesis runes, and perhaps even surpass himself. The Thunder Prison Peak Master Lei Jun slowly said, "Peak Master White Brow, your actions are a little inappropriate." However, the White Brow Elder did not back down after Peak Master Lei Jun's words this time. The former shook his head instead as he firmly said, "Peak Master Lei Jun, as the Peak Master of Spirit Rune Peak, I have the right to decide my successor." Peak Master Lei Jun fell silent. He too never expected the White Brow Elder to place such importance in this young lady. Thus, he spoke no further, because it was as the White Brow Elder had said, he did have the right. Sect Master Qingyang and the rest exchanged a look, but did not say anything. They could tell that the girl called Zhu Xiaoyao possessed amazing Genesis Rune talent. For some unknown reason, however, there were barely any Genesis Qi undulations in her body. Hence, it would be best for her to enter Spirit Rune Peak. Lu Xuanin's eyes turned red with envy when she saw this. The value the White Brow Elder saw in Yao Yao far surpassed Zhu Yuan. In fact, the promise the White Hair Elder made was practically unheard of. If Yao Yao really ended up choosing Spirit Rune Peak, won't that mean she could become its Peak Master in the future? How high of a status would that be? At this thought, the blaze of envy in Lu Xuanin's heart was already nearly about to burn her alive from the inside. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Yao Yao's slightly glowing drop-dead gorgeous face remained calm from start to end, even in the face of the impossible to reject promise from the White Brow Elder. In the end, she shook her head and pointed towards Zhu Yuan. "I do not want to be separated from him, so I will also be joining the St. Genesis Peak." Zhu Yuan immediately saw countless fire-spitting gazes shoot towards him, as if wanting to burn him alive. Innumerable fire-spitting gazes converged on Zhu Yuan's body, anger boiling within them. After all, anyone would feel a stab of pain in their heart when they heard a girl as beautiful as Yao Yao say such words for a guy. Why wasn't it them instead? Amongst all the gazes, the most piercing one naturally belonged to the White Brow Elder. His burning gaze was fixed on Zhu Yuan. The original miserable look on his face had been replaced by a faintly fuming one. Over the years, this was the first time he had seen someone with such outstanding Genesis Rune talent. Even when compared to Zhu Yuan, there was undoubtedly a vast difference. Such talent had made ripples appear in the White Brow Elder's calm as an ancient well-like heart. In his eyes, Yao Yao was akin to a perfect, but unpolished gem. Only through proper training would she reach the pinnacle of Genesis runes in the future, and likely even surpass himself. Therefore, when he heard that Yao Yao had actually rejected him, because she did not want to be separated from Zhu Yuan, it was very difficult to swallow. As such, even though he had a very favorable opinion of Zhu Yuan just moments ago, the latter had now become somewhat of an eyesore. In response to the countless fire-spitting gazes, Zhu Yuan felt rather awkward, not knowing what to say. He naturally knew that this was an excuse Yao Yao had come up with, but why could she not give an excuse that was easier for others to accept? This current one was basically dragging him through the mud. The white-brow elder viciously glared at Zhu Yuan several times, before turning back to Yao Yao as he said in a kind and friendly manner, "Little girl, my spirit rune peak has countless old Genesis rune texts and an abundance of other similar resources. Even in the entire Zhangshuan sect, there's no other place that has a collection as grand as ours. If you join us, all of them can be browsed by you at any time." The white-brow elder had found out about Yao Yao's fondness for Genesis rune books from Elder Zhongming, especially those from long, long ago. Hence, he threw out this carrot, hoping it would change her mind. His words had indeed caused Yao Yao's heart to shake a little. However, after some thought, she still regretfully shook her head. She was a little worried about leaving Zhu Yuan in St. Genesis Peak alone. After all, his goal was the second Saint rune hidden in St. Genesis Peak. If some accident were to occur while she was not around, it would be extremely dangerous for him. The white-brow elder tried to persuade with sincere advice, "Little girl, if you go to St. Genesis Peak, there will be no one to teach you Genesis runes. It will only be a waste of your talent." Yao Yao chuckled softly. She had followed at Kang Yuan's side for so many years, and had already received the true essence of his teachings. She was currently only limited by her spirit cultivation. If her spirit was powerful enough, she was confident that only a few individuals in the Zhangshuan sect would be able to surpass her in Genesis runes. The white-brow elder's face regained its miserable look after the repeated rejections. This was likely the first time he encountered someone who showed nearly no interest in their spirit rune peak. Sectmaster Qingyang and the rest exchanged a look, every individual helpless. Zhu Xiaoyao was even more a character than Zhu Yuan. Sectmaster Qingyang could not help but open his mouth to speak when he saw the white-brow elder's appearance. "How about this? You can stay in St. Genesis Peak, and when you have time, you may go to Spirit Rune Peak to let Peakmaster Whitebrow give you guidance in your Genesis rune cultivation. In addition, you may freely browse the many Genesis rune texts in Spirit Rune Peak." How does this sound? The white-brow elder hesitated for a moment, before he nodded and said, "Sectmaster's suggestion will work too." He felt that it would be better to first get this little girl on the hook first. When she gradually became a Grandmaster of Genesis runes in the future, she would naturally remember the kindness he had shown. By that time, it would not be too late to discuss other matters. Yao Yao was somewhat surprised, likely not expecting that they would value her so greatly. She fell into thought for some time, feeling that the other party was truly sincere. If she kept rejecting again and again, it would indeed be a little disrespectful. After all, she and Zhu Yuan were currently both disciples of the Zhangshuan sect. From the looks of it, their stay here would not be short. Therefore, she ultimately gave a slight nod and said, "If I have any free time in the future, I will seek guidance at the Spirit Rune Peak." Upon seeing that she had finally agreed, the white-brow elder breathed a sigh of relief as if a load had been lifted from his shoulders. The pained look on his face had receded substantially, now brightened by a smile instead. Only now did the numerous disciples understand, after seeing this scene. Zhu Xiaoyao was the one who had concealed her talents the best amongst this batch of Outer Mountain disciples. All of them had fought tooth and nail for the right to enter the Seven Peaks. In comparison, she was so popular that she had even been able to reject even Peakmaster Whitebrow's personal invitation. Compared to her, even the champion of the ceremony, Zhu Yuan, felt rather lacking. Now that the top 10 disciples had chosen their peaks, Sectmaster Qingyang turned his head and gave a slight nod to the other 5 hegemons. Rumble. In the next instant, the 6 hegemons acted at the same time. Vast Genesis chi soared into the sky, transforming into a sea of different colored lights. When one took a closer look, one would realize that there were exactly 6 colors, each representing one of the 6 peaks. These specks of light began to fall, ultimately landing between the brows of the over 9,000 disciples. As such, all of the disciples were now allocated. However, none of these disciples had the right to choose, and were instead forcibly divided by Sectmaster Qingyang and the rest. However, none of these disciples were unhappy with such treatment. After all, there were still several tens of thousands of disciples that did not even obtain the qualifications to enter the inner mountains. In a short time of about half an incense stick, every disciple had been allocated, causing the entire mountain to be filled with excited voices. The outer mountain disciples, that had failed to obtain a spot, were clearly saddened. They knew that they would have to continue staying in the outer mountains to train. They could still enter the inner mountains if they managed to reach the 4th layer Alpha Origin stage within a certain time period. However, they knew that by the time that happened, they would have already lost the initiative. Even if they entered the inner mountains, they would have fallen behind the nearly 10,000 disciples that had succeeded today. Moreover, priority would be given to the earlier disciples for numerous cultivation resources. This was the so-called, once one fell a step behind, one would always be a step behind. To catch up and even surpass them, a tremendous amount of effort and luck would be required. As such, there were those who were overjoyed, and those who cried, all kinds of emotions present in the air. Sect Master Qingying looked down as his powerful voice rang in every disciple's ears. In 3 days, someone will come to receive all of you. Starting today, all of you 9,999 disciples will become inner mountain disciples of the Zhongshuan sect. I hope that you will continue to strive in your cultivation after entering the inner mountains and not slack off. Disciples understand. The numerous disciples respectfully acknowledged. Sect Master Qingyang nodded. In the sky, the vast Genesis Chi clouds rippled before gradually disappearing along with the 6 hegemons. After the departure of the hegemons, everyone burst out into deafening cheers. The peak selection ceremony that decided their futures had finally reached its end. Zhu Yuan raised his head amongst the cheers that filled the sky, gazing into the distance as a dazzling radiance emerged from the depths of his eyes. Saint Genesis Peak. He was really quite looking forward to it. He too knew that only by becoming an inner mountain disciple would he truly be considered to have stepped into the grand doors of the Zhongshuan sect. This video will end here.